would like to introduce Dr. Mike McGill, Lynn Shane, and Jerry Creasy, Head of Technology, and Lynn is Head of Curriculum, and Mike is the Superintendent of Scarsdale, to share their very groundbreaking work. Thank you.
So thank you all, and it's really a pleasure to be here this morning. And thank you, Deborah, for your very, very kind introduction. I'm not sure that we deserve all the praise, but we'll take it. And it's been a pleasure certainly working with you and the other members of SEI and with the wonderful staff and faculty here at Columbia. So my job for the morning is to set the context for what I'm actually the setup man. I'm pitching like in the fifth inning, but the real heavy hitters, the cleanup guys are coming afterwards. And so I was feeling pretty good about my job here this morning. I was feeling quite confident, and then I came in and I met Marjo Rissanen from Finland, and I was looking at her biography, and it says that her research dissertation concerns itself with skill learning and is multidisciplinary, phenomenological philosophy, cognitive neuroscience, and pedagogy are the main aspects. And so, of course, I read that and felt immediately completely incompetent and inadequate. And so now I stand before you, stripped of all pride and dignity, doing my best to hold up the side, but realizing that I can't possibly compete with the intelligence and the skill that are here in the room. Also, Deb's set the stage for the day by saying that we are all going to talk about how we are creating transformational change for the 21st century. And I was talking with Stephanie Udall before the meeting also today, and she was describing the process of what she said was change in the state of Connecticut as they're now embracing or not the state's new teacher evaluation requirements, which we also in New York State are having the pleasure of being able to encounter. And she was saying this transition is really hard. The transition periods are really hard, and there's so many kinds of transition going on. And I was thinking as I was talking to her, yeah, and it would be a lot easier if we had any concept of what it looked like on the other side. We're in a period in which there is tremendous change, and there's, as Ruth said, there's lots of talk and lots of jargon being used, and the jargon changes from almost day to day and week to week. But in the end, it is very difficult to know what this transformation, if that indeed is what we're in the midst of, it's very hard to know what that ultimately is going to produce. And it's even hard to know when you're in the middle of whatever it is we're going through, what is of lasting value, what is just transient, what is a fad, and what has real meaning. So this has been an interesting journey to this point, and I suspect that the journey is not about to get any more calm or any more predictable as we go forward. So with that said, what we hope to do is to share some experiences and we've had in the process of trying to figure out what comes next, what makes sense for at least this one school district. And the challenge, of course, we as I think all of us face, is to try to figure out how to create system-wide innovation in a culture that is either bottom-up or top-down, or I guess the way we see ourselves as being someplace in between. A lot of ideas bubble up from the bottom. A lot of ideas seem to percolate out. Actually, we don't think top-bottom so much as we think side-to-side in Scarsdale. So if I'm over here and the board is over here, teachers are someplace on this side of the spectrum. And ideas seem to generate from all over that spectrum and to kind of work their way back and forth through highly complex process of conversation and committee work, and through a whole series of professional growth and development and dialogue vehicles. So our theory has been that we need to, and you're really going to be surprised by this. Is nothing you ever heard before, right, folks? This is brand new thinking. So our theory has been that we need to engage at least a small band of willing volunteers, and then larger and larger numbers, and we need to sponsor and foster people's investment in new enterprises that seem to be promising, then to create a critical mass of support in order to move towards systemic change. And of course, the real challenge is getting that small and willing band to radiate outwards, that group to radiate outwards and become larger and larger until change becomes not only systematic, but it becomes pervasive. It infiltrates the entire organization at a very deep level. Where are we, Jen? So, challenge that we, and I suspect you, face. I've already alluded to I didn't just allude to it, I actually referred directly to it. The fact that we live in a highly regulated environment, and I could sit here and anguish with you this morning about the multiple ways in which we're regulated, but I'll spare you that. Each of you, in his or her own way, will understand what I'm talking about, and we'll be able to reflect on that phenomenon individually. In our district, and I suspect in the districts of those represented, we are highly risk averse. We are risk averse because our goal is to get kids into the finest colleges in the universe. We know what's gotten kids into the finest colleges in the universe. We are willing to talk about change and innovation, but the minute any change or innovative idea begins to look like it might threaten the real mission of the organization, I'm saying that somewhat in a somewhat offhanded way, but it's also true. You know, being a little bit cynical about it, but it's also somewhat true. It is at the moment that starts to happen. We find lots of people in lots of different places saying, "Wait a minute, really interesting idea, but maybe you ought to try that someplace else." Can't really change the schedule in the high school because we know that so many periods, so many minutes are really necessary to understand world languages. We know that so many periods, so many minutes are necessary for that, and it's got to be sequential every single day. Can't really change the length of the school day or how periods, how kids allocate their time in the school day, because of course we need to continue to march forward in 19th century fashion as we always have, and if we change, we obviously put our wonderful results at risk. And again, I'm being partly serious and partly having fun with us here. And finally, in our district, and I suspect in many of yours, change has historically come slowly and it's been organic. That is, we don't do a lot of the superintendent coming in and saying to people, we're all going to change the way we do things in the mathematics program, or we're all going to take an entirely different look at a senior year, and we're going to have interdisciplinary courses in our senior year and forget about electives. It just doesn't happen in Scarsdale. So when change occurs, it happens as a result of a lot of discussion and a lot of effort to build consensus. And that can work against, on one hand, it's safe, and it doesn't push people by and large a whole lot faster than they can go. It keeps them a little bit uncomfortable, but it's not like radical discomfort. Of course, the downside of that is that you tend not to try things that are particularly out there. You tend not to try things that are very, very innovative. So I'm going to stop there and turn this over to Lynn Shane, who's now going to talk about what we have tried to do to inject a spirit of innovation into our schools. Lynn.
So I'm looking around the room, and I have to say it's really great to be here today. I was with many of you yesterday, and I've worked with many of you in my past career in Westport, and I live in Weston. So how often is that? I'm going to tell you how we started this whole Center for Innovation idea, going back to 2008, when we, as probably happened in many of the districts represented in the room, really started thinking hard about what is all of this about 21st century skills really. And we looked at what was out there, all the different versions, all the different authors and speakers that were offered to us, and we also came to the conclusion this really wasn't anything new. We had been teaching the list of 21st century skills for quite a long time. I remember meeting here at Teachers College and being told this was really Renaissance, this list of 21st century skills. But what we decided to do in Scarsdale to make sense of it all was to package it all up and call it a Scarsdale Education for Tomorrow, and include Scarsdale's historic themes, as well as the critical and creative thinking and non-standard problem solving, which our whole district decided was truly fertile ground. We were doing it, but we could do it better, and we could do it deeper, and we could do it stronger. And what particularly resonated with our community and our faculty was the idea of the non-standard, very challenging, complex problems, because it was 2008, we were in a recession. Nobody seemed to be able to explain how we could get out of it. And just saying that seemed to rally various constituency groups. The faculty got it, the parents got it, the school board got it, and so we were on our way. And so this helped us, get some energy, some movement. And even though change in Scarsdale does come very slowly and organically, there seemed to be a lot of support for redesigning our curriculum with all these elements in mind. And we did have a celebration in 2010 to document our progress. And at that time, we were in our first year with Columbia Teachers College in our research project. And we asked them to show what they had picked up in terms of documentation in Scarsdale that first year. And we could actually see there was some growth. So we went on from there, and we did not abandon interdependence, love of learning, or non-CD, the traditional Scarsdale themes, non-CD meaning not for oneself alone, as we embarked on this new course with our curriculum. And Scarsdale has been known for innovations prior to even thinking about a Center for Innovation. Some of them you may have heard of. I think the one that really got a lot of pushback initially was our change from advanced placement courses, which we completely dropped, and replaced them over a 3-year period with advanced topics courses. A lot of anxiousness in our community when that happened. Just keep those SAT scores high, keep those college admissions in the same range as they always were, and we'll be fine with it. So when we produced evidence that we had done just that, everyone seemed to relax. We also had an e-portfolio effort going at our middle school. We have the whole 7th grade involved in e-portfolios to collect evidence of student work. And the 5th grade capstone research project has been, I think it's probably in its 8th year now, and it was the first opportunity or the first experience in Scarsdale of a true, authentic performance-based assessment across 5 elementary schools, all 5th grade students. This was a breakthrough in our district. And so with those successes under our belt, we decided that we could really branch out. These 3 initiatives we saw as the precursor for our Center for Innovation. And we see this as taking our focus on innovation up a level. Just as we heard about 21st century skills for what seemed like decades, we're now hearing with increased volume and frequency about the need for K through 12 districts to transform themselves from what exists now to a new transformational conception to prepare students to be innovators and entrepreneurs. This message is coming from government, business, universities, and the U.S. Department of Education, strangely enough. Many technology companies are developing and marketing products to support this effort. But when we started, we had no idea what this looks like at the ground level. We had heard the theory and the rhetoric, but what we needed, what was missing for us, was the blueprint. How do you do this? Are there any exemplars at K-12? And we didn't find any. And truly, Jerry and I looked at each other when the board not only gave us the 50,000 we requested, but an additional 50,000. How often does that happen when the board doubles your request to start a Center for Innovation? It was one of those moments that doesn't come often, if ever, in careers. And we then privately said, how are we going to do this? Where do we start? We decided, again, that what would work best is to start slowly and incrementally and organically. And so that's the way we proceeded. We also kept in mind what Mike was talking about, and that is the risk-averse nature of our community, all stakeholders, and the fact that we're highly regulated. So how did we proceed? That's the story that we're going to be sharing with you today. We'd like your feedback and suggestions, and we want to share it because, frankly, we're looking for partners. We'd like someone else to talk to who's trying this too, to guide us in our conversation. And so I'm going to now introduce the co-director of the Center for Innovation, my incredible partner, Jerry Creasy.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you everyone for coming today, for Deb and her team for arranging this conference. On the screen you can see the 3 goals we have for our Center for Innovation. The first is to rethink teaching and learning. The second one is to foster widespread change beyond an individual classroom. And the third was to help us learn what other organizations are doing to foster innovation in their environments. We thought the center would be unique because as far as we knew, it was the only one that was hosted and funded by a K-12 public school system, focusing on big ideas and large-scale projects. And at the end, we knew we wanted to share our work in an innovative way through an interactive report, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. So how did we get started? Well, as Mike alluded to, everything at Scarsdale comes from the faculty. So we began with having a voluntary meeting of our faculty, and 90 people showed up after school on their own to discuss what a Center for Innovation could look like. Then the board came through with a financial commitment of $100,000 in the budget. We had consultations with community members and also some high school students about what schools could look like in the future. And these are our guiding questions. How are other organizations promoting innovation in their organizations? And what can be transferred to K-12 public schools, from colleges or from universities or even from corporations? So what I'm going to do is just share with you pieces from our e-journal that tells our story. It was published at the end of September. If you go to our website, you can download it. It's visible right now. You can view the interactive version on an iPad. You can also view it on a Mac with the new operating system that's coming out in about 2 weeks. So the e-journal has a number of components, and it really tells our story. We wanted to start out by actually going and taking the different parts of the Center for Innovation and making chapters about each of them. So it starts out with an introduction to the center, highlights of the speakers we had during the year, and also focuses in on our projects that were funded through the center. So let's go to the introduction just for a moment. We began our journey by taking a trip up to Boston after we started our mission statement to take a look at how innovation happens in higher education. And the end of our journey ended up with these funded projects you're going to learn more about in just a moment. So we went up to Cambridge, first to see the Harvard iLab, which was a new innovation center that had just opened 2 months before we went to visit it. And if you look at the iLab, a place where students can come together and create innovative projects, what do you see? Does that look like your classroom, classrooms in your school? One of the things we noticed is that the iLab had furniture that could be reconfigured very easily to foster collaboration. And that's an idea that we wanted to take back to Scarsdale. And then we went to the MIT Media Lab, and we noticed the same thing. Once again, rooms with that foster collaboration, removable furniture, open spaces, and things of that nature. We also had an opportunity to visit with a professor at MIT who talked to us about work that he was doing with his program. The other thing we have in the journal, if you download it, is we have links to different places that we visited. So for example, if you click on the Edgeless School link, it'll take you to the Edgeless School exhibit, which we visited in New York, and you can read more about it on the Edgeless School website. The next part of our journal focused on speakers. We were fortunate enough to have Dr. Tony Wagner come and talk to our faculty about innovation. And
that the culture of schooling, as we practice it and promote it, is radically at odds with a culture of learning that
So if you go to a journal, you can actually listen to some sound clips from Dr. Wagner's speech. So it's about 4 minutes worth of his wisdom, as well as Yang Zhao, who came and spoke to us about creativity and world-class learning. And also Will Richardson, who spoke about the impact of technology in learning. And you could listen to those in the e-journal. We also wanted to share how we met with these consultants and what they did. We really had them come to Scarsdale for the entire day. They spent time talking to our teachers. They spent time in the evening talking to the members of the community about how schools will change. And the most important thing we wanted them to do was stir the pot, create conversation among our teachers so that they would have dialogue about what the future of school could look like. The other thing in our e-journal that you may find interesting is that you can go in, just like in any e-book, and highlight information and make note cards yourself. You can also tweet those notes through your Twitter account if you find something compelling through your Twitter account. And finally, the big part of our e-journal consists of the actual projects. And these are tours of the different projects. We had 8 funded projects, as Lynn said. One of them was a makerspace that was designed in one of our elementary schools. And here you'll see kind of the picture of the makerspace when it was first started, and then after the construction took place. And the idea behind this makerspace that makes it innovative is that the makerspace and the work that comes out of it actually goes back and informs the science curriculum in the school, rather than being seen as something outside of the curriculum. We also have teachers sharing their information about their projects.
Some of the materials we use are a product called Little Bits, which is actually sort of a snap circuit design, which is very sort of intuitive. And
so you'll see some videos of teachers talking about their projects as well. And then of course some examples of student work that are being embedded in the journal. The future of the journal is that we're going to be adding more things to the journal rather than doing a second version. So if you download the journal now, you'll get to see other enhancements to it if you download it again in about 3 months. And then the last part of our journal was to bring people inside the work that we're doing. So in this case, you're going to see what it looks like to print something in 3D using a 3D printer from our makerspace. This is a student who's printing a maglev train. So once again, to show people what this work really looks like. I'm going to turn this back to Lynn to talk about the project grants.
We have 8 funded projects that came out of the Center for Innovation so far. And we've had these projects funded for not quite 1 year. So this is not something that's been completely developed, fully developed, but I'd like to share them with you. And they just fell out this way. There are 3 at the elementary, 2 at the middle school, and 3 at the high school. So at the elementary level, 1 is the Makerspace project that Jerry just highlighted. And we have further funding from the newly formed Scarsdale Education Foundation that has given us money to start makerspaces at the other 4 elementary schools. We also have a project that's documenting student inquiry in an alternative way, documenting through photographs and scripting, which we feel is a promising strategy, especially with young learners. And we have a professional development initiative to try and connect our teachers together in a teacher innovation network as a way to provide professional development, video conferencing, and meetups through virtual connections. At the middle school, the two funded projects are, one was to take service learning one step further. The impediment was the daily calendar, the school schedule, and we have a group working on trying to change the calendar around to provide time during the school day for service learning and reflection on the service learning to take place. The second is game-based learning, and this was really ignited by the visit to MIT. The professor that our group met with is working on simulation games at MIT. This really triggered an idea that was then taken further by this group, and this grant in particular also has gotten further funding from the Scarsdale Education Foundation to bring in a game designer as a consultant for several months to design games that actually go with the middle school curriculum. At the high school, the first project was to imagine and design flexible learning spaces for the high school of tomorrow, which is now getting embedded in a much broader project of redesigning the high school, hiring an architect to do that, looking at the space to see how new spaces could be designed and provided. But it really started, or simultaneously to this thinking, it started with the group who applied for this grant. The second is about transforming the physical education program at the high school to make it interdisciplinary with a health education program and with science and with an interdisciplinary approach with a wellness focus, biofeedback, and so forth. And the third one is to try and support a growing global awareness program at the high school. We have multiple groups, as you probably do, going out on the art trip, on the Spanish trip, on the choral trip, on the orchestra trip to countries far and wide. And they're not going out at the same time of the year, so it's very disruptive. In order to support a more cohesive way of doing this, the high school group is looking at changing the school year calendar to try and provide 2 consecutive weeks aligned with the school vacation for this to occur. And so Jerry and I are going to tell you what we learned. We learned that our teachers became extremely energized. Ignited is not too strong of a word to use here. They welcomed the opportunity to collaborate on interdisciplinary projects.
We also learned that teachers wanted opportunities to research and to do research, and that they were very passionate about the work that they had intended to do. This is a quote from one of our teachers. "If no one asks, you may have a great idea, but you can't run with it without having an opportunity to do so. You gave us permission to be innovative." And that was a word that kept coming up over and over again. Permission to be innovative, permission to fail. That's what one of the goals of the center was. So Lynn and I come up with this little algorithm, which is passion plus permission equals progress. Taking the teacher's passion, letting them have the permission to do their work and research and design new schools, and that would make us have progress. Someone else said that the Center for Innovation provides a structure that we didn't have before. It's a home for big ideas. And there was validation from teachers about the leadership in the district through the school board, and said that many schools talk about 21st century learning and innovation, but our district actually came up with funds and supported a center which was innovative. We also needed to manage expectations from the board and the community, and then we also involved and updated our parents, which is something that I think is important if you're going to go and found a Center for Innovation. One of the last things is that the center allows us to connect with like-minded partners who are also interested in instructional innovation. And what happened very recently is Will Richardson blogged about the center on his blog and talked about what Scarsdale was doing, and then challenged other districts. Now he has 43,000 followers on his blog, and challenged districts to say, but here's my question, especially to school leaders. What's stopping you from doing the same thing? From starting your own Center for Innovation? That's a question that you may want to ask you in your own district. What's stopping you from doing a Center for Innovation in your school. And from his blog, people started tweeting about it, and people are talking about doing some things like that in their district as well. And we hope to meet with some of these partners who are located in much warmer, sunny climates. We can take field trips and learn more about innovation in schools. So we've taken the first steps. We expect our scope and ambition of projects to grow. And what really inspires us to continue our efforts? And someone said this quote, and I think this is something that's very relevant for all of us. If you stand still while the rest of the world moves forward, you're really moving backward. And that's true, right? And that's the story of our center, Scarsdale Center for Innovation, a home for people with big ideas. For more information about our center, you can go to our website, scarsdaleschools.org/innovation. And if you go to the website, you'll see at the very bottom there's a link for the e-journal, which you can download. Here's our contact information. We want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to present today.
I'd just be interested to know if they could talk about the role of student choice and student voice in developing the curriculum, developing even where you went to study and how you reached out to your student community.
I have to say, we did have focus groups with our students before we began the center, as we did with community members and our teachers. We have not involved the students in directing the growth or progress of the center up to this point. This is something that we had hoped to do initially, but again, slow and incremental. We needed to build up with our teachers first, and maybe at some point we will.
Just want to say in some projects, we have the student voice included in the development and the implementation of the project. An example of that is the makerspace, where the students are having input in how the space should look and how it should be designed. And then we'll talk more about that at the high school too.
Another project that is being funded by the Scarsdale Education Foundation that was not on our list is Hack Scarsdale. You may be familiar with Hack Yale, Hack Princeton. At the university level, we're hearing more and more, my back is to, about student groups that are being formed to help other students. It's a peer-to-peer phenomenon where students offer to give courses to their peer students on some aspect of technology, and often are developing apps, websites, to help the greater community, the greater Cambridge community, the greater Princeton community, greater New Haven community. And we found out about this, just to make a connection, through Gabriel Rossi, who worked with us in Westport, who is now the Associate Director of the Yale School of Management, and was one of our initial speakers when we were just getting organized to start the Center for Innovation. And he offered to host a group of Scarsdale students who might want to learn from the Yale students, and he hoped to find a Scarsdale graduate who is part of Hack Yale. So it's slowly happening.
Thank you.
Bill Donahue.
From?
Bill Donahue from Byron Hills. Mike, when you started talking, you alluded to the problem of doing this within a regulation system, and so the answer to this may already be out there, but two of the biggest impediments I see are state regulations, things like seat time, how credits are awarded, the fact that there is no other way for students to be rewarded in schools, and then union rules about things like how many kids have to, how kids are credited, how teachers teach in classrooms and all of that. Do you have any insight yet?
Thank you.
I think you've named the problem. Until the State Department of Education becomes more flexible about many of its requirements, I just think we are working within a defined box. Our union situation may be a little bit different from many others. We have a very long and in many ways productive relationship with our faculty organization that isn't like my experience. My experience with this union is not like my experience with unions anywhere else in the universe. We do not have defined class limits, student loads. We can assign teachers teachers to a number of classes in terms of past practice, but there's no contractual limitation on number of classes teachers can carry. When teachers are outside of classes, we do not have, particularly at the secondary level, time reserved to the teacher for preparation. So theoretically, our teachers are available to kids anytime they're not actually teaching in class. And that's a system that in a district like Scarsdale has worked well because people haven't taken advantage. We have not taken advantage of the teachers. There's a real culture of professionalism that is unlike, as I said, it's unlike any that I know of any place else. So, I think we're in a very fortunate position in that respect. And I think the issue in other districts where the relationship between union and management has been more difficult, edgier, certainly that would be a much bigger concern than it is for us.
The one thing you notice about what Scarsdale's done is they totally ruptured the idea of space and time when it comes to learning, and they've made it everybody's business, and it's all the time, everywhere. And that's what that center is as a metaphor. The chair is a perfect metaphor for that. You have to move around to learn. You just simply cannot stay straight.